I was 13 years old when my own father threw me out into a Colorado blizzard, wearing nothing but thin cotton pajamas and fuzzy slippers. Blood from my split lip mixed with snowflakes as I stumbled through knee-deep drifts, my bare legs burning from the below-zero wind. My hands were already turning blue when I collapsed against my best friend Sarah's front door, knowing that my brother Tyler's lies had just destroyed everything I thought I knew about family. The pounding of my fist against that wooden door grew weaker, with each desperate knock, hypothermia stealing my strength, while I prayed someone would answer before I froze to death in my own neighborhood. My name is Megan, and until 3 days before that terrible night, I thought I lived in a pretty normal family. We had a nice 2-story house in Boulder, Colorado, with a white picket fence and everything. My dad, David, worked as a bank manager, downtown always wearing pressed shirts and talking about responsibility and trust. My mom, Linda, was a traveling nurse who spent weeks at hospitals across Colorado, helping train new staff and covering emergency shifts. She made good money, but it meant she was gone a lot. Then there was my brother, Tyler. 15 years old, 6 feet tall, and the kind of kid that made adults smile and say things like, "What a fine young man." He played varsity soccer, made honor roll every semester, and had this charming way of talking that made teachers and parents think he was mature beyond his years. But behind closed doors, when no adults were watching, Tyler was completely different. He had been tormenting me for years in ways that left no visible marks. Psychological warfare, I guess you could call it. He would hide my homework so I got in trouble at school, then act concerned when my grades slipped. He would eat my lunch and tell Mom I was throwing it away because I was developing an eating disorder. He knew exactly how to push my buttons and then play innocent when I finally exploded in frustration. But what happened 3 days before the blizzard was different. That was when Tyler decided to destroy my life completely. It started on a Tuesday morning when Dad discovered his wallet was missing from his dresser. Inside that wallet was $400 in cash that he had withdrawn specifically for my upcoming 8th grade class trip to Washington, D.C. I had been looking forward to that trip for months. We were going to see the Smithsonian, tour the Capitol building, and visit all the monuments I had only seen in textbooks. Dad searched the entire house, growing more frustrated by the minute. Mom was working a double shift at a hospital in Denver, so it was just Dad, Tyler, and me at home. I helped look everywhere for the wallet, checking under couch cushions and coat pockets, even in the garbage disposal. Tyler helped too, acting just as concerned as the rest of us. That afternoon, when I got home from school, Tyler was waiting for me in the kitchen with this weird expression on his face. He looked almost sad, which should have been my first warning sign, because Tyler never looked sad about anything that happened to other people. "Megan," he said quietly, "I need to talk to you about something serious." I dropped my backpack by the door and grabbed an apple from the fruit bowl. "What's up?" Tyler glanced around nervously like he was checking to make sure we were alone. "I saw something earlier and I really wish I hadn't." A cold feeling started growing in my stomach. "Saw what?" "I saw you take Dad's wallet from his dresser this morning. I was coming out of the bathroom and you were in his room, and I watched you take it out and stuff it in your backpack." I nearly choked on my apple. "What, Tyler? That's insane. I never took Dad's wallet. I would never steal money, especially not from Dad." But Tyler shook his head sadly, like he was disappointed in me. "Megan, I saw you. I know what I saw. And I really hope you haven't already spent that money or given it to someone, because Dad is going to want it back." "I didn't take anything," I shouted, panic rising in my chest. "Tyler, you know I didn't do that. Why are you saying this?" That's when Tyler's expression changed completely. The fake sadness disappeared, replaced by something cold and calculating. "Because it's time for you to learn what happens when you're nothing but a burden on this family. Before I could respond, I heard Dad's car pulling into the driveway. Tyler immediately switched back to his concerned big brother act. "Look," he whispered, urgently, "I haven't told Dad yet because I was hoping you would just return the money on your own. But if he finds out what you did, he's going to lose it completely. You know how stressed he's been about work lately." My hands were shaking now. "Tyler, please, you have to believe me. I never touched Dad's wallet." "Maybe if you check your backpack really carefully, you might find something there," Tyler said, with a meaningful look. "Sometimes people take things and then forget about it when they're under stress." With growing dread, I ran upstairs to my room and dumped out my entire backpack on my bed. Notebooks, pens, gum, my calculator, and then at the very bottom, Dad's brown leather wallet. Empty. I stared at it in complete shock, my mind racing. I knew I hadn't put it there. I knew Tyler had to have planted it somehow. But as I heard Dad's footsteps coming up the stairs calling my name, I realized that the truth didn't matter anymore. Tyler had set me up perfectly. "Megan." Dad's voice was already tense. "Come down here right now." I grabbed the empty wallet and walked downstairs on shaking legs. Dad was standing in the living room with Tyler, who had managed to work up some very convincing tears. "Dad," Tyler said in a choked voice, "I really didn't want to have to tell you this, but I found something in Megan's room." Tyler reached into his pocket and pulled out the $400 in cash, slightly crumpled, like it had been hidden somewhere. "I found this money stuffed under her mattress, and when I asked her about it, she admitted she took your wallet, but she made me promise not to tell you." "That's not true," I screamed, holding out the empty wallet. "Tyler planted this in my backpack. I never took anything. He's lying." But Dad wasn't looking at me anymore. He was staring at the money in Tyler's hand with an expression I had never seen before. Pure rage. $400, Dad said quietly, the exact amount that was in my wallet. "Dad, please listen to me," I begged. "Tyler is setting me up. He put the wallet in my bag and he must have hidden the money somewhere so he could find it. Please, you have to believe me." Tyler wiped his eyes and sniffled. "Dad, I really tried to give her a chance to tell you herself. I told her that stealing from family was wrong and that she needed to return the money and apologize. But she just got angry and told me I better keep my mouth shut or she would make me sorry." "You're lying," I shouted again, but I could see from Dad's face that he had already made up his mind about who to believe. The punishment was swift and brutal. Dad grounded me, indefinitely canceled my school trip, took away my phone, and told me I was forbidden from leaving the house, except to go to school. When I tried to protest, when I tried to explain that Tyler was manipulating him, Dad's voice turned ice cold. "I don't want to hear another word from you, Megan. You stole from your own family. You lied about it. And now you're trying to blame your brother who was honest enough to tell me the truth, even though it hurt him to do it." That night, lying in my room with no phone, no computer, and no way to contact anyone, I finally understood what Tyler had meant when he said it was time for me to learn my place in the family. But I had no idea that this was just the beginning. That's when I heard Tyler talking on his phone in his room next door. His voice was low, but the walls in our house were thin, and I could make out every word he was saying to his girlfriend, Brittany. "You should have seen her face," Tyler was saying with a laugh. "She actually thought Dad would believe her over me. I've been planning this for weeks, waiting for the perfect opportunity. The best part is this is just phase 1. By the time I'm done with her, Dad's going to be so convinced that she's a problem child that he'll probably send her to one of those military schools for troubled kids. And then I'll finally get the peace and quiet I deserve." I pressed my ear against the wall, my heart pounding, as I listened to my brother describe in detail how he had stolen Dad's wallet, planted it in my backpack, and hidden the money in his own room until the perfect moment to discover it. "She's always been Dad's little princess," Tyler continued. "But Dad's been under so much stress lately with the layoffs at the bank, and Mom's never here to defend her. This was the perfect time to show him what a manipulative little liar she really is. And the beauty of it is, the more she protests her innocence, the more guilty she looks." As I listened to my brother laugh about destroying my relationship with our father, I realized that I was completely alone in this house with two people who saw me as either a criminal or a target. And Mom wouldn't be back for another week. The next 2 days passed like a nightmare. Dad barely spoke to me except to give orders or remind me of my restrictions. I wasn't allowed to use the phone, the computer, or even watch television. Tyler, meanwhile, played the role of the concerned older brother, perfectly asking Dad if there was anything he could do to help me get back on the right track. "I just worry about her," Tyler would say, with perfect, fake sincerity. I keep thinking, maybe there's something deeper going on. Like maybe she's hanging out with the wrong crowd at school, or maybe she's experimenting with drugs. I mean, stealing money is pretty serious. What if this isn't the first time? Every word out of Tyler's mouth was designed to plant more seeds of doubt in Dad's mind, and I could see it working. Dad started looking at me like I was a stranger, like I was some kind of dangerous person who had infiltrated his house. I tried calling Mom's hospital from the landline in the kitchen when Dad was at work, but Tyler had gotten there first. He had somehow convinced Dad to put a block on all outgoing calls except for emergencies. When I picked up the phone, all I got was a recorded message saying that long-distance calls were restricted. At school, I was desperate to talk to someone, anyone who might be able to help me. I thought about telling my favorite teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, but Tyler had anticipated that too. He drove me to school every morning and picked me up every afternoon, helping Dad keep an eye on me during my punishment. And he made sure to walk me to my first class and be waiting outside my last class, so I never had a chance to talk to any teachers alone. On Thursday afternoon, Tyler pulled me aside in the hallway between classes. "Having fun yet?" he asked with that same cold smile. "What do you want from me, Tyler?" I whispered, trying not to attract attention from other students. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I can," he said simply. "Because you've been getting away with being the perfect little daughter for too long, and it's time for Dad to see what you really are." "I'm your sister," I said desperately. "We're supposed to look out for each other." Tyler laughed softly. "You're not my sister. You're an obstacle, and obstacles get removed." That's when I knew he wasn't going to stop with the wallet incident. Tyler was planning something worse, something that would destroy my relationship with Dad permanently. I just didn't know what it was until Friday afternoon. I was at my locker after school getting my books for the weekend homework that I wouldn't be allowed to do anyway, since Dad had taken away all my study materials as part of my punishment. The hallways were mostly empty, since Tyler always made me wait until all the buses had left before he would drive me home. I was shoving my biology textbook into my bag when I heard Principal Johnson's voice behind me. "Megan Thompson, I need you to come to my office immediately." My stomach dropped. Principal Johnson looked serious, and he had Campus Security Officer Martinez with him. I followed them to the main office, my mind racing through everything I might have done wrong. But I had been the perfect student lately, keeping my head down and staying out of trouble. Principal Johnson closed his office door and gestured for me to sit down. Officer Martinez stood by the door like he thought I might try to run away. "Megan," Principal Johnson said, settling behind his desk, "we received a very concerning phone call this morning about some illegal activity involving you." "What kind of illegal activity?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Drug dealing, Officer Martinez said bluntly. Someone called in a tip that you've been selling prescription medication to other students. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. That's not true. I would never do that. I don't even have access to prescription drugs. Well, let's find out, Principal Johnson said. We're going to need to search your locker. They had me open my locker while they watched. I pulled out my textbooks, notebooks, and the few personal items I kept there. Everything looked normal until Officer Martinez reached into the very back corner and pulled out a small plastic bag containing what looked like white pills. "What are these, Megan?" Principal Johnson asked. I stared at the pills in shock. I have no idea. I've never seen those before in my life. Someone must have put them in there. Officer Martinez opened the bag and examined the pills. These look like OxyContin. Pretty serious stuff for a 13-year-old to be carrying around. I'm not carrying them around, I protested. Someone planted those in my locker. I swear on my life I have never seen those pills before. But then Principal Johnson reached into my locker again and pulled out a folded piece of paper that had been hidden behind my biology textbook. He unfolded it and read it silently, his expression growing more disappointed. "Megan, is this your handwriting?" He turned the paper around so I could see it. Written in what looked exactly like my handwriting was a note that said, "OxyContin $20 per pill. Pain relief guaranteed. Tell your friends. Ask for Megan T." I felt like I was going to throw up. That's not my handwriting. I mean, it looks like mine, but I didn't write that. Someone copied my handwriting and planted that note. "Who would do something like that?" Officer Martinez asked. "My brother," I said immediately. "My brother Tyler has been setting me up. He stole my dad's wallet and planted it in my backpack 2 days ago, and now he's doing this. He wants to get me in serious trouble." Principal Johnson and Officer Martinez exchanged a look that made my heart sink. They clearly didn't believe me. "Megan," Principal Johnson said gently, "I understand that you're in a difficult situation, but blaming your brother isn't going to help you here. These are serious charges. We're going to have to call your father and report this to the police." They made me sit in the office while they called Dad at work. I could hear Principal Johnson's side of the conversation explaining about the drugs and the note. I could hear Dad's voice getting louder and angrier through the phone, even from across the room. When Tyler came to pick me up, he was accompanied by Dad, who had left work early. Dad's face was stone cold, and Tyler looked appropriately shocked and concerned about his sister being caught with illegal drugs. "I just can't believe it," Tyler said sadly as we walked to the car. "First the stealing, and now this. Megan, what's happening to you?" In the car, Dad didn't say a single word to me, but I could see his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles were white. When we got home, he went straight to his room and slammed the door. That evening, Tyler came into my room with a satisfied expression on his face. "You know what the best part about this is?" he said, sitting on my desk chair like he owned the place. "Dad doesn't just think you're a thief anymore. Now he thinks you're a drug dealer, a criminal who's putting other kids in danger." "How did you get those pills?" I asked quietly. "Mrs. Henderson next door takes them for her back pain," Tyler said casually. "She had a party last weekend and left her purse in the living room. It was so easy to take a few pills she probably doesn't even know they're missing." "And the note?" "I've been practicing your handwriting for weeks," Tyler said proudly. "I found some of your old homework assignments in the recycling bin and traced over them until I got it perfect. Pretty clever, right?" I stared at my brother in complete disbelief. "Tyler, do you understand what you've done? I could get expelled from school. I could get arrested. This could ruin my entire future." "That's the idea," Tyler said cheerfully. See, Dad's been talking to Mom about sending you to one of those wilderness therapy programs for troubled teens. You know, the kind where they drop you off in the middle of nowhere with nothing but a backpack and make you earn your way back to civilization. I think this drug thing is going to push him right over the edge. He stood up and headed for the door, then turned back with that cruel smile I was starting to hate more than anything in the world. Oh, and Megan. Tomorrow. I'm going to tell Dad that I heard you on the phone with some older guy making plans to meet up and sell him more pills. I recorded our conversation tonight on my phone, and I'm going to edit it to make it sound like you were talking to a drug dealer. Dad's going to think you're involved with dangerous people. Tyler, please, I begged. I'm your sister. How can you do this to me? But Tyler was already walking away, whistling softly to himself, like he didn't have a care in the world. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, knowing that Tyler was planning something even worse for tomorrow. I had no way to contact Mom, no way to prove my innocence, and a father who had already convinced himself that I was a lying criminal. The walls were closing in around me and I couldn't see any way out. But I had no idea that the next day would bring a blizzard that would change everything. Friday morning brought the kind of weather that made meteorologists issue dire warnings and school districts cancel classes. Snow had been falling since midnight, and by dawn, there were already 8 inches on the ground, with no sign of stopping. The temperature had dropped to 15 below zero, and the wind was howling like something out of a horror movie. Dad called in sick to work for the first time in years, which meant I was trapped in the house with both him and Tyler all day. The mood in our house was suffocating. Dad barely looked at me, and when he did, his expression was filled with disappointment and something that might have been fear. Tyler, on the other hand, seemed energized by the storm, like he knew it was going to provide the perfect backdrop for whatever he had planned. Around noon, while Dad was outside shoveling the driveway for the 3rd time, Tyler made his move. I was in the living room reading a book when I heard a loud crash from Dad's study. It sounded like something heavy had fallen and broken. I ran toward the sound and found Tyler standing in the middle of Dad's study, surrounded by the shattered remains of Dad's prized baseball memorabilia display. Dad collected vintage baseball cards and autographed baseballs, and he had spent years building a beautiful display case that held his most treasured items. Now that case was in pieces on the floor, and cards were scattered everywhere. Some of the glass had cut Tyler's hand, and he was bleeding onto Dad's rare Mickey Mantle rookie card. "Tyler, what happened?" I gasped. Tyler looked at me with wild eyes. "You happened, Megan. You attacked me when I tried to stop you from going through Dad's collection." "What, Tyler? I just got here. I heard the crash from the living room." But Tyler was already grabbing my arm, digging his fingernails into my skin hard enough to leave marks. "Dad's going to see these scratches and know you fought me. And he's going to see his collection destroyed and know you did it." "Tyler, please don't do this," I whispered, but he was already pressing a piece of broken glass against his own forearm, drawing a thin line of blood. "Stop it!" I tried to grab the glass away from him, but he pushed me backward, and I stumbled into the bookshelf, knocking over a lamp. That's when Dad burst through the front door, snow covering his coat and anger radiating from every inch of his body as he saw his study in ruins. "What in the hell happened here?" Dad's voice was deadly quiet. Tyler immediately burst into tears, holding his bleeding arm against his chest. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I tried to stop her, but she went crazy. She was going through your baseball cards, and when I told her to put them back, she just lost it completely." I opened my mouth to protest, but Dad held up his hand to silence me. "Tyler, are you hurt?" Dad's voice was gentle when he spoke to my brother, completely different from the cold tone he used with me. She pushed me into the display case when I tried to grab the cards away from her, Tyler said through his tears. And then she scratched me when I tried to hold her back from breaking more stuff. Dad examined Tyler's arm, which was covered in convincing scratches and cuts. Then he looked at the destroyed memorabilia, including his Mickey mantle card that was now stained with Tyler's blood. "That card was worth $3,000, Dad said quietly. "Dad, I swear to you, I didn't do this," I said desperately. "Tyler did this to himself. He's been setting me up all week, and now he's trying to frame me for destroying your collection." But Dad wasn't listening anymore. He was staring at his ruined baseball cards with an expression I had never seen before. Not just anger, but something deeper, like I had destroyed something sacred to him. "Tyler, go clean up your arm and bandage those cuts," Dad said without taking his eyes off the broken glass. "Megan, you and I need to have a conversation." Tyler gave me one last satisfied look before heading to the bathroom. I stood alone with Dad in the ruins of his study, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. "Dad, I started, but he cut me off immediately." "Don't you dare say another word," Dad said, his voice rising. "First you steal money from this family. Then you bring drugs into my house and put other children at risk. And now you destroy something that took me 20 years to build, something that meant everything to me. Dad, please listen to me. Tyler is lying about everything. He's been planning this whole thing to make you think I'm a bad person. He told me he wants you to send me away to military school." That's when Dad finally looked at me directly, and what I saw in his eyes made me step backward in fear. Pure rage. "You're going to stand there and blame your brother Tyler, who tried to protect you by not telling me about the wallet until he had no choice. Tyler, who probably saved other kids from buying drugs from you by reporting what he found. Tyler, who got hurt trying to stop you from destroying my property." "Dad, none of that is true," I said, my voice shaking. "Tyler planted the wallet, Tyler planted the drugs, and Tyler just destroyed your collection and hurt himself to make it look like I did it." "Stop lying," Dad shouted, and his voice was so loud that it made the windows rattle. "I am sick to death of your lies, Megan. You have become a person I don't even recognize. You're a thief, a drug dealer, and now you're a destructive little sociopath who can't take responsibility for anything she does." I felt tears streaming down my face, but I couldn't stop trying to make him understand. "Dad, I love you. I would never steal from you or destroy something important to you. Please, you have to believe me. Tyler is manipulating you." That's when Dad's control finally snapped completely. I said, "Stop lying." He screamed, and before I knew what was happening, his hand connected with my face in a sharp slap that sent me stumbling backward into the wall. I stared at him in shock, holding my burning cheek. Dad had never hit me before, never even come close to hitting me. But he wasn't done. "You want to act like a criminal? Fine. You want to destroy everything good in this family? Fine. But you're not going to stand there and lie to my face about your brother." He grabbed me by the shoulders and shook me hard enough to make my teeth rattle. "Tyler is the only decent person left in this house. He's honest, he's responsible, and he's been trying to help you even though you don't deserve it." "Dad, please," I sobbed, but he shook me again. "You're going to apologize to your brother. You're going to clean up this mess, and then you're going to sit in your room and think about what kind of person you want to be when you grow up, because right now you're on track to end up in jail." I tried to pull away from him, but his grip on my shoulders was too tight. "Dad, you're hurting me." "Good," he said, and the coldness in his voice was more frightening than his anger had been. "Maybe pain is what it takes to get through to you." He pushed me away from him so hard that I fell to the floor among the broken glass. My hands were scraped and bleeding now, too, but Dad didn't seem to notice or care. "Get out of my sight," he said quietly. "Go to your room and don't come out until I decide what to do with you." I scrambled to my feet and ran upstairs, slamming my bedroom door behind me. I could hear Tyler in the hallway, probably listening to everything that had just happened. A few minutes later, there was a soft knock on my door. "Megan." Tyler's voice was gentle and concerned, the perfect imitation of a caring brother. "Are you okay in there?" I didn't answer, but I heard him talking to Dad downstairs. "She's really lost it completely, hasn't she?" Tyler was saying. "I mean, destroying your baseball collection was bad enough, but lying about it afterward, that's actually kind of scary." "I don't know what's wrong with her," Dad replied, and I could hear the exhaustion in his voice. "It's like she's become a completely different person." "Maybe we should think about getting her some professional help," Tyler suggested. "I mean, this behavior isn't normal for a 13-year-old. The stealing the drugs, the violence, the compulsive lying, those are all warning signs of serious psychological problems. Your mother is going to be devastated when she finds out about this," Dad said. "Well, maybe it's better if Mom hears it from us first, before the school or the police call her," Tyler said. "I could call her tonight and explain what's been happening. That way she won't be completely shocked." I pressed my ear against my bedroom door, listening to my brother systematically poison my relationship with both of my parents. He was so good at it, so convincing, that I almost started to doubt my own memories of what had really happened. Around dinner time, I heard them talking again downstairs. Dad was on the phone with someone, and from the fragments of conversation, I could hear it sounded like he was researching residential treatment facilities for troubled teenagers. "Yes, she's been stealing from family members," Dad was saying. "And we found drugs in her school locker. Today she became violent and destroyed several $1,000s worth of property." I curled up on my bed and cried until I felt empty inside. Outside, the blizzard was getting worse, and the wind was howling like some kind of wild animal. The power flickered a few times, and I could hear tree branches snapping under the weight of the snow. Around 10 o'clock, Tyler came to my room one more time. "Dad's really upset," he said through the door. "He's talking about sending you away as soon as the storm passes. Someplace in Utah where they specialize in kids with behavioral problems." "Tyler, please," I said weakly. "I can't take any more. What do you want from me?" "I want you gone," Tyler said simply. "I want you out of this house and out of this family. And after tonight, I think I'm going to get exactly what I want." "What do you mean after tonight?" But Tyler had already walked away, leaving me alone with the sound of the storm and the growing certainty that whatever he had planned for me, it was going to be worse than anything that had happened so far. I had no idea that in less than 2 hours I would be fighting for my life in a blizzard, wearing nothing but pajamas, after my own father threw me out into the deadly cold. The final confrontation came just before midnight, when the blizzard was at its worst and the temperature had dropped to 20 below zero. I had been lying in bed listening to the wind howl and the house creak under the weight of snow, when I heard voices getting louder downstairs. It started with Tyler's voice, panicked and breathless, calling for Dad. "Dad. Dad, you need to come quick." I heard Dad's footsteps running down the hallway and Tyler's voice getting more frantic. "She's completely lost it, Dad. She attacked me in my room. Look what she did to my face." My blood turned to ice. I crept to my bedroom door and opened it just a crack to listen. "She said she was going to kill me in my sleep," Tyler was saying, his voice shaking with what sounded like genuine terror. "She said she was tired of me ruining her plans, and that if I didn't help her steal more money from you, she was going to hurt me." "Where is she now?" Dad's voice was deadly calm. I think she went back to her room, but Dad, she had a knife. One of the big kitchen knives. She held it to my throat and said she wasn't going to let me stop her anymore. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Tyler was telling Dad that I had threatened him with a knife. The lie was so outrageous, so completely insane, that surely Dad wouldn't believe it. But then I heard Dad's footsteps coming up the stairs fast and heavy, and I realized that Tyler had finally pushed him past the breaking point. Megan. Dad's voice was like thunder. Get out here right now. I opened my door and stepped into the hallway in my thin cotton pajamas. Dad was standing at the top of the stairs with an expression I had never seen before. Not just anger, but something approaching hatred. Dad? I started, but he cut me off immediately. Did you threaten your brother with a knife? No, Dad, I've been in my room all evening. I haven't even left my room since dinner. Tyler is lying again. But Dad was already moving toward me, and I could see from his face that he was beyond listening to explanations. You held a knife to your brother's throat and threatened to kill him. Dad, that never happened. I don't even know where the kitchen knives are kept. Please, you have to listen to me. Tyler appeared at the bottom of the stairs holding a dish towel to his face, like he was bleeding. Dad, maybe we should call the police. I don't feel safe with her in the house anymore. No, Dad said quietly. I'm not having police cars in my driveway. I'm not having the neighbors see my daughter being arrested. This family has been through enough humiliation. He grabbed my arm and started pulling me toward the stairs. You want to act like a violent criminal, fine? You can live like one too. Dad, where are you taking me? I asked, but I was already starting to understand, and the realization made me start to panic. You're not staying in this house another minute, Dad said as he dragged me down the stairs. You're not going to threaten your brother, you're not going to destroy any more of my property, and you're not going to turn this family into a war zone. Dad, please, it's a blizzard outside. The temperature is below 0. Should have thought of that before you decided to become a threat to everyone around you. We reached the front door, and Dad started unlocking the deadbolt. Outside, the wind was screaming and snow was piling up against the windows. Dad, you can't throw me out in this weather. I could die out there. Maybe sometime in the real world will teach you to appreciate what you had in this house, Dad said as he opened the door. The blast of cold air that hit me was like a physical blow. Snow immediately started swirling into the house, and I could see that the drifts in our front yard were already up to my waist. Dad, please don't do this. I begged, grabbing onto the doorframe. I'm sorry about everything. I'll apologize to Tyler. I'll clean up the study. I'll do anything you want. Just please don't make me go out there. But Dad pried my fingers off the doorframe and pushed me out into the snow. The cold hit me like a million needles, instantly soaking through my thin pajamas and making me gasp in shock. When you're ready to tell the truth about what you've done, and when you're ready to get the help you need, then maybe we can talk about you coming back. Dad, I'll freeze to death out here, I screamed over the wind. You should have thought of that before you chose to be a criminal and a threat to your own family. The door slammed shut, and I heard the deadbolt click into place. I pounded on the door with both fists, screaming for Dad to let me back in, but there was no response. Within minutes, I couldn't feel my hands or feet anymore. The snow was so deep that every step was a struggle, and the wind was so strong that it kept knocking me off balance. My pajamas were already soaked through, and ice was forming in my hair. I knew I had to find shelter fast, or I was going to die. The only place I could think of was my best friend Sarah's house, which was 3 blocks away through the storm. Sarah's mom, Patricia, worked as a social worker, and she had always been kind to me. If anyone would take me in during a blizzard, it would be them. The walk to Sarah's house was the longest 3 blocks of my life. I fell down multiple times in the deep snow, and each time it was harder to get back up. My legs were going numb, and I was starting to feel sleepy, which I remembered from health class was a dangerous sign of hypothermia. By the time I reached Sarah's front porch, I could barely lift my arms to knock on the door. My knocks were weak and pathetic, and I was crying so hard that I could barely breathe. The porch light came on and I heard footsteps inside. Then the door opened and Patricia was standing there in her bathrobe, staring at me in shock. Megan. Oh my God, what happened to you? My dad threw me out, I managed to say through chattering teeth. Please help me. Patricia immediately pulled me into the house and started wrapping me in blankets from the hall closet. Sarah, come down here right now and bring me all the extra blankets from the linen closet. Sarah appeared at the top of the stairs in her pajamas, took one look at me, and ran to get the blankets. Within minutes, they had me wrapped up on the couch next to the fireplace with hot tea in my hands. Megan, I need you to tell me exactly what happened, Patricia said as she examined my hands and feet for signs of frostbite. Between chattering teeth and exhausted sobs, I told her everything. The wallet incident, the planted drugs, the destroyed baseball collection, and finally, Tyler's lie about the knife threat that had pushed Dad over the edge. Patricia listened to everything without interrupting, but I could see her expression growing more and more serious as my story went on. Megan, she said when I finished, I need you to know that what your father did tonight was child endangerment. Throwing a 13-year-old out into a blizzard could have killed you. But he was so angry, and Tyler made it sound like I was dangerous. Honey, there is no excuse for what happened to you tonight. None. And I want you to know that you're not the first person to tell me about concerning things happening in your family. I looked at her in confusion. What do you mean? Patricia glanced at Sarah, who was sitting on the floor next to the couch holding my hand. Megan, I'm a mandated reporter, which means that as a social worker, I'm required by law to report suspected child abuse. I've been documenting some things about your situation for a while now. Well, what kind of things? I've noticed bruises on you that didn't match your explanations. I've seen how you flinch when people raise their voices. I've watched your grades drop and your behavior change over the past few months. And I've heard some troubling things that Tyler has said when he thought adults weren't listening. Sarah squeezed my hand. Mom, tell her about the carpool conversation. Patricia nodded. 2 weeks ago, I was driving Tyler and some other kids home from soccer practice. Tyler was bragging to his teammates about how easy it was to manipulate adults and how he had convinced your father that you were a problem child who needed to be dealt with. He specifically mentioned planting evidence and lying about incidents to make you look bad. I stared at her in amazement. You heard him admit it. I heard enough to know that what was happening to you wasn't your fault, Patricia said. But I needed more concrete evidence before I could take official action. Unfortunately, what happened tonight provides that evidence. She pulled out her phone and started taking pictures of my injuries, my soaked clothes, and my overall condition. Patricia, I said quietly, my mom doesn't know any of this is happening. She's working at a hospital in Denver and she won't be back until next week. Actually, Megan, I think your mother knows more than you realize. I looked at her in confusion. What do you mean? Your mother and I have been in contact for the past month. She's been very concerned about some changes she's noticed in your father's behavior and some things Tyler has said to her on the phone. She's been documenting incidents on her end, too. Mom knows that Tyler has been lying about me. Your mother suspects it, but she's been afraid to confront your father directly because she's worried about how he might react. She's been gathering evidence and consulting with a family law attorney about how to protect you. Sarah looked at her mother with wide eyes. Mom, you didn't tell me any of this. I couldn't, sweetheart. But now that Megan is here and safe, I can tell you both that your mother has been planning to take action for weeks. She just didn't know it would become this urgent." Patricia stood up and went to the kitchen phone. "I'm calling your mother right now regardless of the storm. She needs to know what happened tonight." As I sat wrapped in blankets by the fire listening to Patricia make the call that would bring my mother home, I realized that I wasn't as alone as I had thought. While Tyler had been systematically destroying my relationship with Dad, other people had been watching and documenting and preparing to help me. But I still had no idea just how prepared my mother had been, or how completely she was about to turn the tables on both Tyler and my father. Patricia's phone call to my mother lasted over an hour, and I could hear Mom's voice getting louder and more upset as Patricia described my condition and the circumstances that had led to me nearly freezing to death. When Patricia finally hung up, she turned to me with a grim expression. "Your mother is driving home right now despite the blizzard. She said to tell you that she loves you, that none of this is your fault, and that she's going to fix everything." I spent that night on Sarah's couch, drifting in and out of sleep, while the storm continued to rage outside. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Dad's face filled with hatred as he pushed me out into the snow. I kept wondering if I would ever be able to go home again, or if home would ever feel safe again. Saturday morning brought clear skies, but brutally cold temperatures. The snow had stopped, but there were 3-foot drifts everywhere, and most of the roads were still impassable. That's why I was shocked when I heard a car pulling into Sarah's driveway around 9 in the morning. Patricia looked out the window and turned to me with a surprised expression. "That's your mother's car. I can't believe she made it through those roads." I ran to the window and saw Mom climbing out of her Honda, which was covered in snow and ice from her drive through the mountains. She looked exhausted and worried, but also determined in a way I had never seen before. Patricia opened the front door before Mom even had a chance to knock, and Mom immediately crossed the room to where I was sitting and pulled me into the tightest hug of my life. "I'm so sorry, baby," Mom whispered into my hair. "I'm so sorry I wasn't here to protect you. Dad thinks I'm a criminal." I sobbed into her shoulder. "Tyler convinced him that I stole money and sold drugs and threatened to hurt him. Dad hates me." "Your father doesn't hate you, sweetheart. Your father is being manipulated by someone very clever and very disturbed. But that's going to stop today." Mom pulled back and looked at me seriously. "Megan, I need you to understand something important. What happened to you this week didn't happen because you did anything wrong. It happened because Tyler is engaging in a systematic campaign of psychological abuse, and your father is too stressed and overwhelmed to see what's really going on. But Dad believes everything Tyler says. He thinks Tyler is perfect." "Tyler has been playing a very sophisticated game," Mom said. "But he made one crucial mistake. He assumed that nobody else was paying attention to what he was doing." Mom reached into her purse and pulled out a thick folder full of papers. "Patricia, thank you for documenting everything you observed. But I want to show you what I've been collecting." She spread the papers out on Sarah's coffee table, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. There were printed copies of text messages, photographs, handwritten notes, and what looked like official documents. "Mom, what is all this?" "Evidence," Mom said simply. "For the past 3 months, I've been documenting every concerning conversation I've had with your father about you, every suspicious story Tyler has told me, and every time I've come home to find you upset or injured with an explanation that didn't quite make sense." She picked up one of the printed text messages. "This is a conversation Tyler had with his girlfriend where he bragged about getting you in trouble for stealing. He sent it 3 weeks ago, long before the wallet incident happened." Mom showed me another document. "This is a report from your school counselor documenting that your grades and behavior changed dramatically starting in October right around the time Tyler started his campaign against you. How did you get all this? I've been working with a family law attorney and a private investigator for 6 weeks, Mom said. I knew something was wrong, but I needed proof before I could take action. I also needed to make sure I could protect you legally. Patricia was examining the documents with professional interest. Linda, this is incredibly thorough. You have enough evidence here to prove systematic emotional abuse and parental alienation. But I also have something else, Mom said, pulling out her phone. I've been secretly recording conversations with your father when he calls to complain about your behavior. And last night, after Patricia called me, I decided it was time to stop collecting evidence and start taking action. Mom played an audio recording on her phone. It was her voice and Dad's voice having what sounded like a normal conversation. David, I'm coming home early because of the storm. Good, because we need to talk about Megan. She's completely out of control. Tonight she threatened Tyler with a knife. What, David? That doesn't sound like Megan at all. It's exactly like Megan. You just refuse to see what she's really become because you're never here to witness her behavior. David, where is Megan right now? I don't know, and I don't care. I threw her out of the house. You threw her out, David. It's a blizzard outside. The temperature is below 0. Maybe sometime in the real world we'll teach her to appreciate what she has. Mom stopped the recording and looked at me with sad eyes. Your father admitted on a recorded phone call that he threw a 13-year-old child out into a deadly storm. That's felony child endangerment. I stared at my mother in amazement. For months, I had thought she was oblivious to what was happening in our family. But she had been watching, documenting, and preparing to protect me the whole time. Mom, why didn't you tell me you knew what Tyler was doing? Because I needed to be absolutely certain, and I needed to have legal protection in place before I confronted your father, Mom said. Tyler is very good at manipulation, and if I had accused him without proof, he would have just gotten better at hiding his behavior. Patricia nodded approvingly. You did exactly the right thing, Linda. Abusers often escalate their behavior when they feel threatened, which is exactly what happened last night. What happens now? I asked. Mom's expression became determined and almost fierce. Now we go home, and your father and Tyler learn what it feels like when the person they've been lying to fights back with the truth. She started gathering up her evidence and putting it back in the folder. Megan, I want you to understand something. The person who threw you out last night wasn't really your father. That was someone who had been systematically lied to and manipulated until he couldn't tell truth from fiction anymore. But that doesn't excuse what he did, and it doesn't mean there won't be consequences. Are you divorcing Dad? That depends on how he reacts when I show him this evidence, Mom said. If he's willing to acknowledge what really happened and get help for his anger issues, then maybe we can rebuild our family. But if he continues to believe Tyler over the clear evidence of what actually occurred, then yes, I'll be filing for divorce and full custody. Sarah, who had been quietly listening to everything, finally spoke up. What about Tyler? What happens to him? Mom's expression became cold. Tyler is going to learn that psychological abuse has serious consequences. The drugs he planted in Megan's locker constitute multiple felonies. The false police reports he encouraged your father to make are also crimes. And the systematic emotional abuse he's been engaging in for months has been thoroughly documented. You're going to have him arrested. That depends on whether he's willing to confess to everything he's done and make a genuine effort to change his behavior, Mom said. But either way, he's never going to be in a position to hurt Megan again. As we prepared to leave Sarah's house and return to mine, I realized that my mother wasn't the helpless victim of Tyler's manipulation that I had thought she was. She was a strategic thinker who had been quietly building a case against her own son and preparing to protect her daughter by any means necessary. But I still wasn't prepared for just how devastating that protection was going to be for both Tyler and my father. When we pulled into our driveway at noon on Saturday, Dad and Tyler were outside shoveling snow like nothing unusual had happened. They both looked up as Mom's car approached, and I could see the confusion on their faces when they realized Mom was supposed to be at work until next week. Dad walked over to the car as Mom and I got out, and his expression immediately became defensive when he saw me. "Linda, what are you doing home? And why did you bring her back here? I told you on the phone that Megan has become dangerous. She threatened Tyler with a knife last night." "I know exactly what you told me, David," Mom said calmly, "and I recorded every word of it." She held up her phone and Dad's face went pale. "You recorded our conversation." "I've been recording our conversations for weeks, David, along with collecting other evidence that I think you're going to find very interesting." Tyler had stopped shoveling and was walking over to join the conversation. He had a confused expression on his face, like he couldn't figure out why Mom seemed so calm and confident. "Mom, I'm really glad you're home," Tyler said with his usual charming smile. "Megan had a complete breakdown last night. Dad and I were just talking about maybe getting her some professional help." "Were you?" Mom said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "How thoughtful of you to be concerned about your sister." She gestured toward the house. "Why don't we all go inside so I can show you both some things I've been working on while I've been away?" Once we were all in the living room, Mom spread her folder of evidence out on the coffee table. Dad and Tyler sat on the couch, both looking increasingly uncomfortable as they saw the sheer volume of documents, photographs, and printed conversations. "David, Mom said, I want you to look at this text message conversation that Tyler had with his girlfriend 3 weeks ago." She handed Dad the printed text, and I watched his face change as he read Tyler's bragging about framing me for stealing money. "Tyler," Dad said slowly, "what is this?" "I don't know," Tyler said, but his voice had lost its usual confidence. "Someone must have hacked my phone or something." Mom laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Someone hacked your phone, Tyler. This is just the beginning. Patricia, would you please come in now?" Patricia walked through our front door carrying her own folder of documents. I had no idea Mom had asked her to come with us. "Hello, David," Patricia said professionally. "As you know, I'm a licensed social worker and a mandated reporter. I'm here to discuss some observations I've made about this family over the past several months." Dad looked confused and increasingly worried. "Patricia, I don't understand what's happening here." "What's happening, David, is that your wife and I have been independently documenting a systematic campaign of psychological abuse that Tyler has been waging against Megan," Patricia said. "And last night, that abuse escalated to the point where you endangered Megan's life based on Tyler's lies." She opened her folder and pulled out photographs. "These are pictures I took of Megan at 2 in the morning after she nearly died of hypothermia because you threw her out into a blizzard." Dad stared at the photos of me wrapped in blankets, shivering and injured, and I saw something shift in his expression. "David," Mom said gently, "I need you to really look at those pictures and ask yourself if that's what happens to criminal children or if that's what happens to abuse victims." Mom pulled out another document. "This is a timeline I've created showing every incident Tyler reported to you about Megan cross-referenced with Tyler's text messages and social media posts. You'll notice that Tyler was planning these incidents weeks in advance." Tyler was starting to look panicked now. "Mom, this is crazy. You can't seriously believe that I would hurt Megan on purpose. She's my sister." "Am I?" Mom asked quietly, "because this recorded phone conversation suggests otherwise." She played a recording of Tyler talking to his girlfriend. "She's not my sister, she's an obstacle, and obstacles get removed." The room went completely silent. Dad was staring at Tyler like he was seeing him for the first time, and Tyler's face had gone completely white. "Tyler," Dad said slowly, "did you plant my wallet in Megan's backpack?" "Dad, I can explain." "Did you plant drugs in her school locker?" Tyler's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. "Did you destroy my baseball collection and then blame her for it?" "Dad, you have to understand I was trying to help the family." "Help the family." Dad's voice was rising now. "You destroyed $3,000 worth of my property and let me blame an innocent child for it." Patricia stepped forward. "David, there's something else you need to know. I've spoken with the police, and Tyler's behavior constitutes several serious crimes. Filing false police reports, drug possession with intent to distribute destruction of property, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Tyler could be charged as an adult for some of these offenses," Mom added. "But Patricia and I wanted to give you a chance to handle this as a family first." Dad stood up and walked over to where Tyler was sitting. "Tyler, I need you to tell me the truth right now. Did you systematically lie to me about your sister in order to make me think she was a criminal?" Tyler finally broke down completely. "Yes," he sobbed. "But Dad, I only did it because she was getting all the attention, and I felt like you loved her more than me, and I wanted you to see that I was the good kid. So you decided to destroy your sister's relationship with her father by making me think she was a drug dealer and a thief." "I didn't think it would go this far," Tyler cried. "I just wanted her to get in trouble, not almost die." Dad turned away from Tyler and looked at me with an expression of complete horror and regret. "Megan, what have I done to you?" I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to run to him and forgive him immediately, but part of me was still terrified of the man who had thrown me out into a blizzard. "David Mao," Mom said firmly, "Megan is going to need time to process everything that happened to her. Right now, she needs to know that she's safe and that the people who hurt her are going to face consequences for their actions." She turned to Tyler. "Tyler, you have two choices. You can confess everything to the police and agree to intensive therapy and community service, or you can be arrested and charged as an adult for multiple felonies. What's it going to be?" Tyler was crying so hard he could barely speak. "I'll confess. I'll do whatever you want. Please don't let them arrest me. And David," Mom continued, "you're going to need to decide if you can live with the fact that you physically abused a child based on lies, or if you think our marriage can survive what you did to our daughter." Dad sat down heavily in his chair and put his head in his hands. "Linda, I don't know how to come back from this. I've destroyed my relationship with Megan. I've probably traumatized her for life." "That depends," Mom said, "on how hard you're willing to work to rebuild her trust and how committed you are to making sure nothing like this ever happens again." Over the next several hours, Patricia took detailed statements from both Tyler and Dad about everything that had happened. Tyler confessed to every incident, including several that I hadn't even known about. Dad admitted to losing control and endangering my life based on false information. By evening, Tyler had been taken to the police station to give his official confession. Dad had agreed to attend anger management counseling and family therapy. And I was sitting in my own bedroom safe and protected for the first time in months. But the best part was knowing that Mom had been fighting for me all along, even when I thought I was completely alone. 6 months later, I was sitting in the audience at my 8th grade graduation, watching my name get called for the Academic Excellence Award. As I walked across the stage to receive my certificate, I looked out at the crowd and saw Mom, Patricia, and Sarah all cheering for me. Dad was there too, sitting quietly in the back, still working on rebuilding our relationship through family therapy. Tyler was not there. He was spending his summer at a residential treatment facility for teens with behavioral disorders, serving out his community service requirement and working with therapists to understand why he had chosen to systematically abuse his sister. The police had ultimately decided not to charge him as an adult, but only because of Mom's intervention and his complete confession and cooperation. The legal consequences had been swift and comprehensive. Tyler was convicted of possession with intent to distribute controlled substances, filing false police reports, destruction of property, and conspiracy to commit fraud. He received 2 years of probation, 500 hours of community service, and mandatory psychological counseling. He was also required to pay restitution for Dad's destroyed baseball collection. Dad faced consequences too. Child Protective Services investigated our family, and while they ultimately decided not to remove me from the home, Dad was required to complete anger management courses and family therapy before I was allowed to be alone with him again. His employer also conducted their own investigation when they learned about his arrest for child endangerment, and while he didn't lose his job, he was passed over for a promotion and received a formal reprimand in his personnel file. But the most important consequence was that our family had been completely restructured. Mom and I moved to a new house across town, closer to my school and Patricia's family. Dad lived there with us, but only after completing 3 months of intensive counseling and proving to both Mom and me that he could control his temper and think critically about the information he received. Tyler would eventually be allowed to come home, but only after completing his treatment program and demonstrating genuine remorse and behavioral change. For now, he visited once a month under supervision, and those visits were focused on him making amends for what he had done to me. The healing process was slow and difficult. I had nightmares for months about being thrown out into the blizzard, and I struggled to trust Dad even after he had acknowledged his mistakes and begun working to change. Family therapy helped, but it took time for me to believe that I was truly safe and that no one would ever be able to manipulate my parents against me again. School became my refuge. Free from Tyler's sabotage and psychological warfare, my grades soared. I joined the student council and started a peer counseling program for kids who were dealing with family problems. My teachers were amazed by the transformation in my confidence and academic performance. I also became close friends with Patricia's daughter, Sarah, and their family became like a second home to me. Patricia taught me about recognizing manipulation tactics and standing up for myself, skills that I knew would serve me for the rest of my life. The most surprising part of my recovery was rebuilding my relationship with Dad. It took months of therapy sessions and difficult conversations, but eventually, I came to understand that he had been as much a victim of Tyler's manipulation as I had been. The difference was that as an adult, he should have known better than to believe everything he heard without investigating for himself. Dad worked incredibly hard to earn back my trust. He attended every therapy session, completed every assignment his counselor gave him, and slowly learned to listen to me without immediately jumping to conclusions. He also learned to recognize the signs of manipulation and to think critically about information before reacting emotionally. 1 year after that terrible night in the blizzard, Dad and I had our first real conversation alone since everything happened. "Megan," he said, as we sat on the porch of our new house, "I know I can never undo what I did to you. I know that throwing you out into that storm was unforgivable, and I know that you might never be able to fully trust me again." I looked at my father, this man, who had once seemed so strong and sure of himself, and saw someone who had learned the hard way that strength without wisdom can be incredibly dangerous. "Dad," I said, "I don't think I'll ever forget what happened that night. but I'm learning to separate the person who hurt me from the person you're working to become. I want you to know," Dad continued, "that I think about that night every single day. I think about how close I came to losing you forever, not just because you could have died in that storm, but because I could have destroyed our relationship permanently." "What changed?" I asked. "I mean, what made you finally see the truth about Tyler?" Dad was quiet for a long moment. "I think seeing those pictures of you at Patricia's house was the moment I realized what I had really done. Up until then, I had been thinking about you as this problem that needed to be solved. But when I saw you in those blankets, injured and traumatized, I suddenly saw my 13-year-old daughter who had been crying for help, and I had refused to listen. And Tyler? Tyler is still my son, and I still love him," Dad said. "But I've learned that loving someone doesn't mean believing everything they tell you or enabling their harmful behavior. Tyler needs help, and he's getting it, but he also needs to face the consequences of his choices." "Do you think he'll ever really change?" I asked. "I hope so," Dad said. "But whether he does or not, my job is to protect you and make sure that no one ever hurts you the way Tyler did, and the way I did." 2 years later, Tyler completed his treatment program and was allowed to move back home under strict conditions. He had to continue therapy, maintain his grades, complete community service, and follow a detailed behavioral contract that Mom and Dad had created with his treatment team. The Tyler who came home was very different from the one who had left. The therapy had forced him to confront the fact that his behavior had been genuinely abusive and could have killed me. He wrote me a long letter taking full responsibility for everything he had done and expressing genuine remorse for the pain he had caused. We're not close the way some siblings are, and I don't know if we ever will be. But Tyler has kept his word about changing his behavior, and he's never again tried to manipulate our parents or create problems for me. He's learned to take responsibility for his own actions instead of blaming others for his problems. Meanwhile, I thrived. I graduated as valedictorian of my 8th grade class and earned a full scholarship to a prestigious private high school. I continued my work with peer counseling and started speaking at conferences about teen abuse and family manipulation. Patricia became my mentor, and I decided that I wanted to become a social worker like her so I could help other kids who were trapped in toxic family situations. Mom became an advocate for domestic violence prevention and started working with other parents who suspected their children were being abused or manipulated by family members. She learned that our situation was more common than she had realized, and that many parents struggle to identify manipulation tactics when they're being used by their own children. The experience taught me several important life lessons that I carry with me every day. First, I learned that truth always emerges eventually, but it requires patience and documentation to prove abuse when the abuser is skilled at manipulation. Mom's careful record-keeping and Patricia's professional observations were crucial to exposing Tyler's lies and protecting me from further harm. Second, I learned that family loyalty should never require accepting cruelty. Tyler spent months trying to convince everyone that questioning his behavior was a betrayal of family bonds. But real family members protect each other from harm. They don't enable it. Third, I learned that survival sometimes requires accepting help from people outside your immediate family. Patricia and Sarah provided the safe haven and professional support that I needed when my own family was too compromised to protect me. Learning to trust caring adults and build a support network probably saved my life. Most importantly, I learned that justice doesn't always look like punishment. Tyler faced legal consequences for his actions, but the real justice came from stopping his abusive behavior, getting him the help he needed to change, and restructuring our family so that abuse could never happen again. Today, I'm a senior in high school with a 4.0 GPA and early acceptance to several top colleges. I have a close relationship with Mom, a slowly rebuilding relationship with Dad, and a carefully maintained relationship with Tyler that includes clear boundaries and ongoing supervision. I'm not the scared, isolated 13-year-old who nearly froze to death in a blizzard because her own family wouldn't listen to her cries for help. I'm someone who learned that speaking the truth, even when no one believes you, is always worth it because truth has a way of revealing itself. I'm someone who knows the difference between genuine love and manipulative control. And I'm someone who understands that sometimes the greatest courage comes not from enduring abuse in silence, but from fighting back with documentation, legal protection, and the support of people who truly care about your well-being. The night I was thrown out into that blizzard was the worst night of my life, but it was also the night that finally exposed the truth about what had been happening to me for months. Sometimes it takes a crisis to reveal who people really are, and sometimes that revelation is exactly what you need to finally break free and build a better life. If you're listening to this story and recognize yourself in my situation, please know that you don't have to endure abuse alone. There are adults who will believe you, document what's happening, and help you find safety. The manipulation and lies that seem so powerful when you're trapped in them become much less effective when you have advocates who know what to look for and how to respond. Family should be a source of safety and support, not fear and manipulation. If it's not, then it's okay to reach out for help and to accept protection from people who truly want what's best for you. You deserve to be believed, protected, and loved for exactly who you are, not punished for crimes you didn't commit or blamed for someone else's abusive behavior. Your truth matters, your safety matters, and your future matters. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Thank you for listening to my story. What's a time when someone close to you made you question your own reality, and how did you finally discover the truth? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because hearing from you helps me know that sharing my experience was worthwhile. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like to help others who might be in similar situations find it. And if you found this helpful, consider subscribing for more stories about overcoming family challenges and finding your voice. Please share this with anyone who might benefit from hearing that they're not alone in dealing with family manipulation. I hope that sharing what I learned can help others recognize when they're being manipulated and give them the courage to seek help before it's too late. Stay strong, trust your instincts, and remember that you always deserve to be treated with respect and kindness.